So welcome back, everybody. This is going to be season 2 of the podcast. I'm going to be shifting gears a little bit in this one, and I've brought on a really special guest who's a really great friend of mine. I met Dan Mangena around 6 years ago, I believe it was. It was about 6 years now?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Wow, that goes real quick, no?
Super fast.
Super fast. And Dan has been somewhat a coach, a mentor, but more importantly, a friend to me. And he's got a very, very special and unique trait to make any room he goes into better than when he entered it. It's really cool. I kind of refer to him as Magic Santa. Because every time you go around Dan, you get somewhat of a gift afterwards or something. Not a physical one, but something happens really good for you in your life afterwards. So I wanted to introduce Dan to you guys, and so that you can experience him and get to know some of his life lessons. And I'm not sure where this conversation is actually going to go just yet, which is the exciting part, because Dan likes to free flow and I like to free flow. And we're not going to break out into rapping, by the way.
We will.
We might.
Probably.
It's probably going to happen.
Probably going to happen.
But we're just going to see how this episode goes. So, Dan, for everybody that doesn't know you, could you introduce yourself and what are your favorite kind of socks?
Favorite kind of socks, as you know, are called sockets. I didn't know they were called sockets before. But thanks to you and your wonderful wall of wisdom, I know they're sockets. So that's my favorite kind of sock. So I'm Dan Mangena, born and raised in East London in the UK. I migrated to Mexico about 4 years ago. I have a son called Ethan, a stepdaughter called Ariana, both who I love very dearly. And I get to run around the world sharing a very important message, I believe. And that's that abundance is our natural state. It's not something that we have to hustle or kill for or take out the competition for. It's something that we get the opportunity to return to. And I love to empower people to step into that.
Beautiful. And I've definitely noticed that in my life since speaking with you, where in the beginning I kind of thought you had to hustle hard. You know, that hustle culture on Instagram was like, if you're not grinding 37 hours a day, what are you even doing, man? That sort of thing, right?
You're just weak.
You're just weak and pathetic and do better. Be better.
Be better.
Be better. But what I've started to realize is once you kind of tap into your natural flow system, everything starts to wrap around you. And I think one of the things that really stuck with me that you mentioned back in Malta, I think it was 5 years ago, was that the universe wraps around how you feel. And I've experienced that to be true in many different areas in my life. When I try to go against my natural feeling and something feels a little bit different, feels a little bit off, it's not my natural way of doing things, like really going out and hustling and cold calling and that sort of thing. When I do that, nothing happens. But when I just relax and ease into it and meet people, something magical just happens. And you put that down to something I'm not really quite tapped into the energy mechanics or any of that sort of stuff. But I think you call me a projector. I don't really understand much of that sort of stuff, to be honest. But I've recognized that my natural state is with people, having conversations, being in front of people. And once I started to kind of accept that, things have actually started to turn around. So how did you get more into the energy side of things? Where did you start with? And what's your journey kind of been from? Can you start from when you started getting into the whole coaching space and take people through your journey?
Sure. So I had no intention of being a coach. I had no intention of helping more people in the particular frame that I do now. Wanting to help people, but not in this context. People can find out more about the full background to my story if they're really, really interested. But I made and lost, obviously, 2 pretty decently sized fortunes by the age of 23. And so I had come to wealth creation through the more metaphysical side of things from the very beginning. I was using mindset and kind of energy from the outset in terms of how I created. I was never on the hustle side of things, really. There was a lot of work, and I do work a lot. You'll probably see me on a plane somewhere, and I've got multiple businesses, and I'm always doing things. But there's never pushing, forcing, or making things happen. Everything that I do is always really in a very relaxed and playful, fun way. That's the way that I like to do things. And it's how I have always. And in fact, the times, much like you've had in your experience, the times that I've tried to make things happen, nothing's ever gone to plan. And I remember about, I want to say 7 years ago, I was backtracking where my success, it was more than 7 years ago. What year is it? 2000
I think it's 1994 or something.
Yeah, it's 2022. So I'm going back to 2014. I was building up another business at that time. And I was looking at, hang on a minute, where had you actually had your wins, Dan? And when I tracked, every single big win that had shown up in my life had come out of the blue. And it came out of the blue when I was in a really happy place. Every time that I'd made this super special plan and I'm going to do things that way, never worked out. And over time, as I studied more about my journey and other people's journeys and the journeys of successful people, and successful people isn't just people who are financially successful. I mean, people who are fulfilled, they live a life of meaning, they've got great connections, they've got health and vitality, they also are following that kind of state of flow too. And it evolved into what I now call money DNA, of which we use human design. You're a projector in human design. But energy is a big part of what we are, and therefore is going to be a big part of what we do and what we achieve. It's not the only thing, but it's a very, very big part of it. And I came to understand that through personal experience, and then over the last 5 or 6 years, helping people on their journey to success also.
Amazing. Back onto the idea of all your wins came out of the blue. It reminds me of something that Joe Dispenza always preaches, where it's people are afraid to step into the unknown because you don't know what's on the other side. So people would prefer to stick in a place of pain than actually push past into the unknown. But he also says, if you just maintain a happy space and a happy state of mind and not know where something's going to come from, that's when something comes in because you least expect it. If you can expect something, it's nothing new. And I've always recognized that when I stay in just a happy space for like even one day, honestly, just for one day, something weird pops up into my life. I'll get random messages. I'll get people calling me out of the blue and say, hey, Josh, we've got this thing for you, or hey, would you like to be involved in this? But when I'm trying to control everything and I'm trying to really, grind and know exactly where something's coming from, my entire awareness is just going to be predictable because it's all I know, it's all I've experienced. So I can't really step outside of that until I allow it to just free flow. So
you mentioned one of my catchphrases, reality or the universe wraps around how you feel. And that's not just a very sexy catchphrase. There's actually some science to that, because we can only behave to the level of our thinking, because 97% of the time, our actions, habits, and behaviors that lead to our outcomes and results are led by our unconscious mind. But our unconscious mind is also limited to our current emotional state. So your emotional state limits your thinking. The thinking generates the behaviors lead to the result. So when our emotional state is trapped in us expecting or fearing or anxious or in any way emotionally related to a particular outcome, it shifts our thinking, shifts our behaviors, even before we go into the mythical, spiritual side of things. Just at that rudimentary level, it ends up leading to what we get. When I get so fixated on one thing, I'm generally fixated on something from a place of fear, anxiety, or overexcitement. That shifts my emotional state and no longer leaves me in alignment emotionally, therefore mentally, and therefore physically with what I want. So this over-attachment to an outcome, which is what happens when we're trying to control, actually often will lead us to being out of whack with it and therefore not being able to receive what we're going for. And that's how that works.
I heard a really cool thing from Alex Hormozi yesterday, where he said that desire is creating a contract with yourself that you'll never be happy until you achieve your outcome.
Ooh, good old Alex.
Oof, right?
Yeah.
You're literally saying that I don't have this and I can't be happy until I do. So whenever you're coming from a place of I want something, it's coming from the idea that you can't even have it.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about language is that we attach meaning based on our experience, right? So good old Alex has taken the word desire. He's got that definition around it, but the word isn't as important as that feeling that sits behind it. That feeling of lack, that feeling of I don't have, I must have. That's a very unhealthy place to be. When I think about the word desire, I've got a different attachment to it, but I've also got a different emotional context to it. I define desire as the heart speaking to you what the divine seeks to experience through you. For me, desire, as I define it, I'm not talking about Alex's definition, I'm talking about a different definition. Is the one that I'd love to invite the listener to tap into is what is so present in my heart space, not from a place of desire, but from a place of connection that I can't help but be called to move towards it. Not what's my egoic drive, not what's my egoic missing space, but what is like bubbling like inside of me, like I'm dreaming about it, not from a I don't have it, but there's like a unification that's waiting to happen with that thing. That's why I'd love people to tap into, rather than chasing these things that often don't come from really what we really want. It comes from what people have said we should have, what we were told we couldn't have, and all these other lack-driven motivations.
Could you give an example of one of those things that really fill you up that you chase towards without the ego?
I don't chase towards it, and this is the crazy.
Go towards.
But this is the crazy thing. The reason why I define desire that way is because if we get a little bit spiritual on this, When there is something inside of us that's seeking to be birthed into the world, generally speaking, you don't have to run towards it because you're already pregnant with it. It wants to come out. I remember when Ethan was going to be born. It turned out there was a lot of complications with Olga's pregnancy, and it was a bit touch and go because he was actually double wrapped. His umbilical cord was double wrapped around his neck, so he was actually for a week trying to be born, but the umbilical cord kept pulling him back up, so he couldn't get out. In the end, it kind of one of them unwrapped. He was still single wrapped, but when he was ready to go, he was ready to go. We were going for long walks and all this other stuff, and we didn't use any drugs to induce the labor, but natural means to induce the labor. But when he was ready to come out, he was ready to come out. There was nothing that we had to say, to force him to come out. When that baby was ready to be born, it was ready to be born. When we focus, at least initially, to develop a level of momentum, our creative energy and our intentionality in our business and in our life around those things that already want to be born through us, there's no chasing that needs to happen because what we want wants us to.
I mean, chasing implies it running away from you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not wanting to be in your life, or you need to hustle to go and get it, when everything that really is for us is already here.
Yeah. What's that thing you say where there is no more matter in the universe, everything's already here?
Oh, yeah. It's the law of polarity. So in universal law, there's one of the laws, the law of polarity, and I'm not going to go into the full thing of it. If anyone wants, we can give them a link. I've got a video on it that people can grab, and we'll pop that for them to go and grab it. But the law of polarity basically states everything in the universe is whole. There's nothing that's in half. Even if you take a circle and cut it in half, you haven't got two halves of a circle, you've got two semicircles. Anytime you cut anything in half, it becomes two whole things that's half the mass of what it was before. It doesn't become a half of a thing. We can refer to it as a half of a thing, but they're two new things that are whole in and of themselves, which when brought back together become a bigger mass of a new thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That was trippy for a second.
But then when we go into the science of it also, everything that's physical has a non-physical aspect to it. When I was in the mystery schools as a younger man, one of the things that we learned is the difference between matter and antimatter. And every single atom in the universe has got a non-physical counterpart to it. We can call that the spiritual aspect of it or the purely energetic side of it. So when we have a thought about something, when we have a non-physical relationship to a thing, in that moment, because of the way that the universe works, the physical counterpart to it, which is part of the whole thing, has to be present in time and space also. So it doesn't mean that when I desire a thing that I have to go out and hustle it, or it's still in the quantum field or in the vortex if you're an Abraham Hicks listener. It means in the moment that I really connect truly to a potential and create it in my mind through feeling and visualization, the physical aspect of it in that moment becomes real in your world somewhere. But for the most part, because of limiting beliefs, because we're caught up in desire, or we're caught up in chasing, or we're caught up in lack, we can't even see the opportunities. And there's an actual physical part of the brain that stops us seeing it. So the person who wants a relationship and they spend all this time visualizing their perfect partner, the second that you visualize that perfect partner with full emotional context and a clear vision, that perfect partner exists in your world. They're there waiting for you. But because you've got limiting beliefs about worthiness, because you've got limiting beliefs about, I'll only be able to do it when this happens and when that happens, you can't even see that perfect partner walking past. It's the same with your financial goals. The opportunity that's going to get you to $1 million business or a 6-figure business, it's in your world the second that you connect to it. But because we get caught up in, I'm not worthy, the opportunity comes in, or the challenge shows up that's going to lead us to the opportunity, and we start to shrink, we play small, we go into lack, we go into fear, and we walk away from it instead.
Interesting. What do you think about people using the idea of manifestation visualization as a cheapskate or a lazy way out? Because I see a lot of people being like, yeah, but I can imagine that I already have this perfect partner or whatever, and they're just not showing up into my life. I'm doing everything right. Yeah. And they're not going out and actually going to try and find people and meet people because they're too shy or worried or, there's limiting beliefs in the past. But a lot of people are using wokeism and abundance and manifestation as a way to actually avoid action. So how do you, in the way that you explain it, how would you merge the two between waiting and also not attacking, but asserting yourself to connect the two?
So first and foremost, I love this because this is obviously the topic of my documentary, which we finished filming. We're just doing the final edit at the moment, Manifest Nation. You can head over to manifestnationfilm.com.
Great name, though.
Yeah, Manifest Nation. So we've got one of the guys who was part of the team that developed the MRI machine. We've got a tenured neuroscientist and we've got a neurobiochemist. And we've actually scientifically interrogated the concept of manifestation with real world case studies and stuff. And we've actually done that in the film. And one of the things that we've actually now looked at from a scientific perspective is so many people actually are using quote unquote manifestation or law of attraction as an excuse to not have to create what they want. It's actually a cop out, but they don't realize they're doing this. Is all happening at the unconscious level. So the unconscious level, they've got these fears, they've got these doubts, they've got this unworthiness, they've got this less than feeling about themselves. And then what ends up happening is their mind attaches onto the thing that allows them almost to be kept distracted instead of doing the thing that's actually going to get them to where they want to be. So let's take an example of someone who wants to do something in their business, right? They say, okay, yeah, I want my business to be successful. I'm going to manifest a successful business. Well, a successful business needs to be defined. If you don't have a definition, you're not actually going to be able to get to any level of success. And so they spend their time listening to tapes and watching YouTube thingies and
Dan Mangena.
And listening to me. No, if they listen to me, they'll probably be doing something. But, visualizing and blah, blah, blah. But they're not actually doing the very simple thing that's going to get them to where they want, because the mind is using this whole narrative to keep them busy and in the same place. And I want people to understand is that I'm not qualifying the mind as being your enemy. The mind is your friend. The reason why it tries to keep you in the same place is because it believes that by keeping you in the same place, it's going to keep you safe. And so it seeks to keep you safe by keeping you in the same place. And so it keeps you distracted so you don't change. Things stay the same. You stay in the same place. It asks for a high five. And you're like, where's my successful business? When the whole thing that would have changed that, at least for step one, would have been defining what a successful business even is.
And I like the way that you explained with the fear and the trying to keep you safe, because the way that I explain things is more towards analytical, intellectual, in the way that like evolution occurred. So where I kind of see the brain as still that caveman, the caveman in the Paleolithic era where it's in a cave. There's one exit, one entrance, and outside is potentially a lion. So it's much easier to stay in the cave. And regardless of you being happy, you're not going to be happy in a cave. You're dark and alone, you're scared. The only time to go out and actually get abundance of food or whatever is to actually fear dying and to go through that. So that's courage or leadership. And what ends up happening is when you start to go out and get more abundance in your life, or more food from the berry tree, or water from the water hole, well, now you've stepped and ventured outside of the cave, and now you find a bigger cave to be afraid in. So now you're going out to start hunting for lions as opposed to being afraid of the lion, but you're still now afraid of death, regardless, just in a bigger context. So every single time you step out of your cave, you just find a bigger cave. So you're never going to get outside that cave. It's always going to want to keep you safe, and that's what the brain does. So for me, when it comes to finding areas in my life that I know will take me to another level, it's essentially trying to find that fear and then follow it. Because if you're not feeling that fear, you're just comfortable, and comfort zone's the enemy of progress or something. I think it is complacency. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very, very similar sort of way of thinking about it. I just think about it as the caveman in the cave,
and that's just so on the money with that, because at the end of the day, we get the opportunity to understand that if there is no stretching, there is no growth. If there is no discomfort, there is no growth. Now, does this mean that I have to be in a perpetual state of discomfort that allows me to even operate? No. The catchphrase, the Danism that I use for that is push your edge and not your buttons.
The Danism?
Yeah. This is a real thing now.
Oh, I need some Joshisms.
Josh, get them going, man.
I got some Joshisms coming up.
I got some Joshisms for you. Josh. And it's musical. It's like you push your edge and not your buttons. So you keep pushing the edge on where you are. You keep moving into that discomfort, but not so deeply into the discomfort that you're not able to function. So we keep that tension. It's I think it's J.T. Fox called it comfortable discomfort, right? So it's not, I'm cozy. Now, this doesn't mean that you always have to be, like you don't get to rest. Yeah, we take pauses. I do it all the time. Like I'll go through a period of growth and then there's a period of rest. In nature, everything rests too, if you look at the seasons. So there's seasons in life. But if we remain in hibernation, we're going to die because we haven't gone out to go and get the berries that are going to go in the belly and keep us through the winter, right? And so it's about going into that discomfort, right? Getting into that fear, dealing with it, and finding the edge point where I'm taking as much discomfort as I can before I can't function, easing back a little bit, feeling that edge, and then leaning into it again. So it's continually leaning into it. That's the only way that we're going to grow. Whether that's gym, like we're working out this morning. It's like...
How do you feel, by the way?
Painful.
Yeah.
Very painful. It's not very painful.
Discomfort.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's like, I can do the 8. All right, I know I can do the 8. My muscles aren't going to grow unless I go to the 10. Doesn't mean that I have to try and do the 15 and get crap form. I could do good form with the 10. Maybe I'm going to crank out a couple more reps to make sure that I'm pushing the edge on it. Because if I'm just, I can do this weight, I'm do it. There's not going to be any growth. If you keep doing the same things in your business, there's not going to be any growth. If you keep doing the same things in your relationship, your girl's going to leave you. You know, it's like there has to be some discomfort if there's going to be any growth at all.
Same, no different.
Same, no different.
I think the way Tony Robbins explains it is the quality of your life or the amount of excitement that you feel is directly correlated to the amount of variety and uncertainty that you have in a lot of different ways. But at the same time, it's like, would you like to receive a gift? Or, yeah, do you like receiving gifts? What if it's a gift of poo? Probably wouldn't like it as much, right? You want gifts that you actually want. So there's certainty in it.
Where do you get this stuff?
It's actually the memory training stuff.
I think this is the Australian in you, to be honest.
It's the Australian, but it's also the memory training. When I started doing all the memory training,
I used weird associations.
Yeah, exactly. So everything, by the way, with the memory training is just like creating the strangest associations as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So whatever my brain does, I just allow it to go forward.
Just go for it.
Just go for it.
Poo in the sandwich.
Would you like a poo gift?
I guess so.
But the thing is, you want gifts that you actually want.
Yeah.
So there's a level of variety in it, but generally you want the certainty of a good gift. Right? But generally speaking, in every area of your life, the things that you've enjoyed, like a new food, you didn't know it in the beginning. You didn't try it before. It was that experience of something new and novelty that made it exciting. But when you go back and get the same sandwich every single day for the next 3 weeks, it's not as exciting anymore.
Agreed. I mean, and this is the thing, going back to what I touched on earlier about the work that I teach with Money DNA, some people can eat the same sandwich every day. Some people actually thrive on the same sandwich every day. They're not going to grow, but they thrive on it in terms of their emotional state. And so it's about understanding yourself and understanding what makes you tick so that you can find the points of stretching, find the points of discomfort that work for you as an individual and lean into those so that you can grow.
I like that. And it's also allowing cognitive space to go elsewhere because people like Barack Obama, they use the same underwear every single day. So there's no extra cognitive load on a choice that doesn't matter. Because if you have big choices to make in your life and your business, you don't want to waste half of, or a little bit of that energy towards something that doesn't matter. So getting rid of things and creating a lot of routine in certain areas that are just routine and tedious, as opposed to using mental effort for something that just doesn't matter in the slightest.
And this is the thing, we spoke about growth and discomfort. There doesn't have to be discomfort in every area of your life for there to be growth. You can grow in one part at a time. You can focus on one area. And in fact, there's some science to support the idea that actually focusing your attention on one area at a time is actually going to be more beneficial and more effective. And so
you can only focus on one thing anyway, right?
Exactly. And so it could be, hang on a minute. So for me, I use the same brand of boxer shorts, always the same brand. I know my size.
Which brand?
Ralph Lauren.
Okay, can we get a sponsorship, Ralph Lauren, just by the way? Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Same brand. I tend to get certain things from the same places all the time, but they are baseline areas that aren't going to be that supportive for my overall growth based on what's important to me. So the things that are important to me are, number one, my work that I do in the world. Up in that list also, being a good dad, right? Being a good family member. These things are important to me, all right? The underwear that I'm wearing isn't having an impact on that. But I am continuing to push the boat out on how I show up as a dad and how I show up as a leader, how I show up as a friend, how I show up as a brother, blah, 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 blah. All of these things. And so I am looking for the edge in those things. But much to your point, these not so important pieces, not so effective, like moving the needle pieces, I leave them the same. because they're not really moving the needle on my life as a whole. And this is why it's so important, again, to know yourself, what your goals are, what your purpose is, what your intentions are, so you can actually identify which things in my life are actually moving the needle on that and which things are not, and focus your attention on the things that are.
Right. And that can also improve the ability to deal with stress and anxiety in different areas of your life. Like if you get served chicken instead of beef when you ask for it, would you get upset?
No.
Yeah. For me, I personally, I don't care. If you give me chicken instead of what I asked for, I'm like, what else?
Yeah.
It's cool. I'll forget it by tomorrow anyway. I don't really care.
Yeah.
So instead of using cognitive load on things that doesn't actually matter.
Yeah. I mean, if you're allergic to beef and chicken, obviously there's there's something to be said.
Hey, sorry, can't eat this.
Don't want to die.
Yeah, we get something else.
Can we get something that's not going to kill me?
Yeah.
Right. That's a very different thing to, it's protein. Would have been nice if they remembered what I said. Might not use this airline again. However, cool. But again, going back to the mind distracting us in order to keep us safe, some people have got so much of the energy and focus that could be moving them towards their goal tied up in these little things that aren't actually moving the needle for them at all. So they're talking about what's going on in the media, what the Kardashians are doing. Wasn't Taylor Swift trending more than something really important the other day?
She sold out tickets or something.
And
Ticketmaster or something died. I don't know.
And it ended up ranking higher than something that people should probably care about because they might die or something, right? And it's like these things are actually linked to us having impact in our life that's going to make a difference, get overshadowed by things that aren't actually changing anything at all. And so, people that are caught up in the media, they're caught up in celebrity lives, they're caught up in whether people are vaccinated or unvaccinated and all this other stuff that people were getting caught up in. Their energy, that glycogen was getting used up with that and wasn't available for people to work on their relationship, to be better parents, to be better family members, better team members, better leaders, better.
So how would you get people to, firstly, how would you get them to identify it? Mm-hmm. And then is there like a core set of skills or things to focus on that you found have been universally relevant to everybody?
Critical thinking. For me, because I'm really, really anti-cookie cutter, like super duper anti-cookie cutter. And that, again, with Money DNA, that underpins the entire teaching that we are all individuals. There will be common threads amongst all of us. Yes, we're generally led by fear or greed at a rudimentary level. Evolutionary psychology means that we all have particular needs, core needs that the reptilian brain is going to be moving towards. But how that shows up and manifests in our life in terms of how we relate to others and even to ourselves is going to vary from person to person. But certainly in terms of skills that are going to support most people in terms of what they're going to be moving towards, critical thinking, the ability to communicate, the ability to listen rather than speaking overly to other people.
What?
Okay. The ability to admit when you're wrong and the ability to learn from your mistakes. I think these are core skills that everybody could benefit from. But in terms of everybody's individual goals, they're going to be micro and sub skills that are definitely going to be more important depending on who you are and what your goals are.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think for me, communication has been one of the biggest ones lately, which is something that I do teach in the workshops.
Yeah. Learned loads from you when we were doing the workshop the other day, which was an amazing. By the way, if you haven't attended one of Josh's workshops, be sure to attend. It's absolutely fantabulous. Even with that, like you were like, Dan, like what are you going to learn today? I'm like, dude, I came to this workshop as if I know nothing. Like I always show up to a book, I show up to a conversation, I show up to a podcast, I show up to whatever with a completely blank slate. Not, oh, I know this and I know that and I've done this for this many years. I always come with a beginner's mind, and I find that supports me in always getting something from anything that I do. And I find that the more that I lean into that beginner's mindset, the more blessed I get from everything that's showing up for me.
100%, because it allows you to be curious.
Yeah.
This is why children are so quick at learning things. It's because they're curious. They actually open their mind for things.
I see this with Ethan all of the time, and it's fascinating to watch him. I mean, I didn't understand what it was like to be a dad until I was a dad, right? And watching, like, even him now learning to speak, obviously he's going to be trilingual. His mum's Russian, we live in Mexico,
so cool.
English, so he's got the 3 languages. And even watching him construct sentences and watching him decide how to like work out how to get what he wants, and like he's got these little traits, and where did that come from? Well, he got it from being curious and watching things and observing and learning. And when we show up in life that way, it's crazy to see the path, the speed and rate of learning and growth that we can experience if we just open up and say, I don't know anything and I'm ready to learn something, rather than I know everything and, you can't teach me anything.
It's kind of like going to, you've never played, I play paddle tennis, right? I was playing this morning. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you had never played paddle tennis and you're meeting a coach who has been playing their entire life, and they're like, you need to do this. And you repeat back to them, no, I think I might do it my way.
But people do that though.
All the time.
People do it all the time.
I wouldn't do that. It's like going to piano. It's like, no, I might play it this way. It's like, you've never touched a piano. Why would you pick it up and pretend like you know better? But there's certain areas of life where people actually apply this sort of thing, where it's they delete everything and pretend to be a fresh student. But a lot of the time it's coming with their own experiences and beliefs and everything that just clouds their judgment and stops them from being able to actually learn something new.
Another Danism is when I allow God to use anything to show me the way, God can use everything to show me the way. Substitute God for universe, source, divine, spirit, whatever works for you. But what that really shows me in terms of how I endeavor to live my life is I allow absolutely everything to be my teacher. A small child, something going wrong, TV show. And I find that I get these messages that lead me on the way to where I'm going that pop up in every single area. And I'm always, always, always led and guided. There's no way, no day, no time that I'm not actually being guided towards what I'm intending, because I open myself up to that. And the same principle that you shared about with a coach, if we open up to life to be that divine coach, that super duper mega coach that has all wisdom, all intelligence, we actually allow ourselves to be so better led to what we want. And this isn't even like a woo-woo, sit back and allow the universe to guide you. That's what I'm talking about. I'm saying allow yourself to be inspired by life as a whole.
And I find that very easy to do when you're in a good space. What if you're not in a good space?
Then you're not in a good space.
And how would you use the universe as a teacher in a bad space?
Well, first and foremost, I endeavor never to qualify space as good or bad. I endeavor to see a moment for what it is and allow the moment to be what it is. Emotions run in waves, and those waves actually don't last any longer than 60 to 90 seconds. And so when I feel angry, sad, depressed, whatever, those waves, I mean the actual thing, not the echo of it, the actual thing is 60 to 90 seconds. What generally happens is because we resist it, we fight it, we beat ourselves up for it, we make ourselves wrong for it, we actually prolong the experience versus, I'm really peed off right now. I'm going to allow myself to feel the fire of that peed offness. I'm going to breathe into it and allow my body to fully experience it. It passes, and then I get the space to decide what I want to feel leading out of that. It may be that I want to be peed off a little bit more. Okay, maybe I'm going to give myself a couple of hours. I'm going to go and have a walk. I'm going to go and, I don't know, watch some comedy or be by myself and allow myself to just experience it. Not make myself wrong. Not, I've been doing this stuff for 20 years. I shouldn't be feeling like this. No, you're a human. And you're not going to be switched on all the time. You're not going to have it right all the time. Jesus lost his, can I swear?
You can do whatever you like.
Jesus lost his shit and turned over everything in the temple, right? So if like that ascended master can lose it and start tossing over temples.
Is that technically a sin?
Well, they were.
We're not going to get into religion and politics.
They were sacrileging the temple.
Food for thought.
Food for thought. But yeah, but if an ascended master is going to lose their stuff and start turning over things, what of us, people that are just trying it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And when we allow ourselves and understand as well that, all right, I'm going to go a little bit off. I'm going to do a little tangent into the esoterics. Cheeky tangent.
A tangent. Oh my God.
Cheeky tangent. Omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. These three concepts are often tied to, at least from a monotheistic perspective, divine presence, whether that's in Islam, in Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, anything that's got a monotheistic. When you go into polytheistic religions, generally speaking, there's an overarching or high power within that context that does have those powers. So in ancient Greece, Zeus was the all-powerful one. In ancient Rome, it was Jupiter, right? So there's always that. When we go into more traditional cultures, in Native American culture, you've got the Great Spirit. You've got the similar one with the Aborigines. So there's always like a high thing that's always got these qualities of omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. Omnipresence is everywhere at all times. Omnipotence, all-powerful. Omniscience, all-knowing. So my friend, about, I want to say 18, 19 years ago, he asked me a question. We'd have these philosophical discussions all the time. He said, D, I've got a question for you. I said, yeah. He said, well, if God has to be omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent, if God's omniscient, then God must know evil. Otherwise, there's something that God doesn't know. Mm. And if God is omnipresent, God must also be in hell. Otherwise, there's somewhere that God is not. And so there is nowhere that we can be outside of the divine, regardless of whether we're in hell or whether we're thinking evil thoughts. To bring that into the context of this conversation, even our thoughts of fear and doubt and less than and anger are still an expression of the divine, because there's nowhere that the divine is not. So instead of judging them, we can actually allow them to be what they are. Allow them to be that 60 to 90 second experience. Allow it to be just something that we're experiencing in our human life. Instead of judging it, allow it to be. And then it doesn't become this negative thing that holds us back or puts us down.
That's a great point. It's just a human experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Because our body can feel these emotions, they're a part of you, so they actually have a purpose and a reason to have them.
Exactly.
I kind of see the emotions that I have. I think, why is it there and how can I use it? It's kind of like an antenna. You're receiving a signal or something. You know? When you get anxiety, it generally means you need to do something. So if you have anxiety, you're putting something off. You know, let's say that I'm a young guy or something, younger than I am. I'm still a bit of a baby, y'all. But,
baby.
But let's say I'm a 22-year-old guy. I'm not very confident for whatever reason. This is actually what maybe I experienced this. I don't know. Maybe that's what I'm telling you.
Who knows?
22-year-old dude. I'm at a bar and I see this girl and I get the initial emotion of intrigue and interest and, you know, whatever, maybe lust or something. And I see her, I'm thinking, damn, I want to get her number. Then I don't. Or I'm standing there and I'm starting to get anxious and I'm getting worried and worked up about the actual going and getting her the number, right? I don't get the number. I'm too shy. I don't actually pick it up. So then I leave and that anxiety starts to flip into maybe anger or resentment towards myself. And then eventually it might turn into hurt. And then eventually it turns into maybe an identity trait where it's like, I am not confident. I am too shy. And all I did was just avoid an emotion that I felt in the time, which was anxiety, which was fear of going and doing the thing.
And what would happen if you did?
And what would happen if I did the thing? But the funny thing about it is fear and anxiety, nervousness and anxiety and excitement are all the same thing.
Yeah.
So if you just literally switch the narrative in your mind of what if she doesn't give it to I'm excited. Well, then you've actually got a better pathway to go down.
Exactly.
And likely going to have a better experience that isn't going to turn into resentment and anger and loss and hurt.
And one of the questions that the listener can ask themselves, and this is one of my hacks also for dealing with limiting beliefs, is when the anxiety kicks in, first and foremost, give yourself a time. So like if I feel an instinct to do something, I give myself 3 to 5 seconds to take action on it. And if I don't take action in that 3 to 5 seconds, I ask myself, why am I not going to take the action? And I follow the thought on it. And normally it will be, well, if she doesn't say yes, then I'm going to be rejected. And what happens? Do you die? Like, do you die? Like, take it all the way. Do you die? No. The worst that can happen is she says no. Okay.
She could slap you in the face.
She could slap you in the face, but do you die?
She can go get a brother. With a baseball bat.
Do you die? Right? And so
probably not.
When you follow that through and you ask yourself, and you just keep challenging yourself, can I be certain that that's even going to happen? You can't be certain that's even going to happen. There is no certainty in the universe at all because everything's infinite possibility that's moving according to probability. And so when we approach these situations that we have this anxiety about with that playful curiosity of, anything can happen, let's see what happens, versus this is what I think is going to happen and I'm having the emotional experience of that thing I know is going to happen and I'm bringing that emotional experience into now experience anxiety and I'm not going to do it. Instead of doing that, we playfully go into the experience. We'll find that we're able actually to take those actions on a more regular basis and not fall into the trap of new identifying or reinforcing the identity of fear and scared and all these other things that leads into these disempowering identities.
So how could somebody do that in their day-to-day life?
Easy. You just ask yourself, why am I not taking this action right now? And then whatever the answer is, can I be certain of that?
Cool.
That's it. Same with limiting beliefs. One of the things, people ask me, how do you break limiting beliefs with people so quickly? Because people come in with these crazy limiting beliefs. I'm like, boom, like literally 5 minutes, and they don't have that limiting belief anymore. People are like, how do you do that? They didn't do like shadow work or they didn't do ayahuasca or whatever. Because you don't need to. You can simply ask yourself, can I be certain that this is true? The second that you ask yourself, can I be certain that this limiting belief is true? It no longer has the same power to hold you back. Now, This does require that you actually have the will to move through what's on the other side of it. So this isn't going to work for someone who doesn't actually want to move forward, but I'm talking about the listener who has a goal that they want to move forward to. They're actually committed to it. They're ready to do the work to move into it, but they feel stuck and the limiting belief is holding them back. Simply ask, give me a limiting belief, any.
Money is difficult to come by.
Can you be certain that that is true?
No.
And then what you do is you then literally go and look for evidence to the contrary of that limiting belief, having questioned if it's true or not.
Like finding people that have lots of money.
Have lots of money who've made it easy. Now, all of a sudden, the brain, it's like a Jedi mind trick on the brain. The brain's like, short circuit. I guess I can't hold that belief anymore. And then you keep reinforcing that new belief and inserting that into your identity through taking action that supports that new belief, through creating and curating an environment that supports that belief, versus having a disempowering environment that supports the limiting belief of conversations with people that have the same thing, or watching films, listening to podcasts, or watching news reports that tell that old story. Switch up the environment to support the new belief. Having challenged it, can I be certain that this is true? And that limiting belief will disappear every time.
And when it comes to changing the environment, because it's obviously one of the biggest ways to change any belief in any triggering scenario, a lot of people have attachments to people, places, things. How would you get them to actually change their environment? Because a lot of the time it's the people that are close to them that are holding them back the most, whether it's family members or best friends and people they're obliged to. How would you get them to change their environment, even if they're feeling emotionally attached or obliged?
I can't. And this is one of the things that I believe coaches, healers, and people of that nature sometimes get caught up on. And it's a trap that I was in for a little while earlier on in my journey for the work that I do now. I can't make you. I can support you in something that you want to do for yourself, but it's your responsibility. I can empower you to take the action yourself. I can give you the tools. But if you don't really want it for yourself, it's not going to happen. And if you really want it for yourself, nothing's going to stop it happening. So someone who's using that as an excuse, what's happening is their unconscious mind is holding on to that. So they have to ask themselves the question, do I really want this thing? Do I really want to have healthy relationships? Do I really want to be in shape? Do I really, really, really want to have financial stability or freedom? Because if you do, then this story of Uncle Jane, they do that in Tanzania, right? Auntie Bob, right? Like, really? That's the thing that's holding you back? Can you be certain that that's the reason why you can't move forward? Bring it to the surface by asking the question, and you're going to see, hang on a minute, no, this was an excuse. And you get to ask yourself the question. Here's the crazy thing, Josh. And this is, a Danism approach that people get lost on sometimes because they don't understand why I say it. Some people don't actually want to be in shape. They like the idea of it, but they don't. They're actually quite comfortable being a slob. And if that's your life, accept it, own it, right? Some people like having toxic relationships. They like having someone that cheats on them or slaps them around. Or they like being the one that does the slapping around. That's what they want. Okay, own it. And then in that ownership, maybe you'll find the space to do something about it. Because so often, the path to what we say we want is really being blocked off by what we actually want. And the actual wanting generally isn't even a true desire. It's not something that's really in the heart. It's programming. It's trauma. It's the pain body. But until we face it and accept it, we're not going to be able to move through it.
It's kind of like the thing with if you're already in hell, keep going, right? Why would you stop there? Yeah, I've always found that once you actually own your own shit, that it's time to actually move on.
Yeah.
And you can actually start doing it.
But you can't move beyond the shit that you haven't owned.
One of the ways that I found that really easy is living through the future ideal self. So every single night when I go to bed nowadays, I have this visualization that I don't know if I heard it somewhere or if I just came up with it. I just started doing it for no reason, and it started to actually really mess with my mind in a really positive way. Where every single night when I'm like in theta state, I'm starting to fall asleep, I hear a knock at the door. I open the door and it's literally me staring back at me, but the perfect version of myself.
Nice.
Where I'm wearing the clothes that I want, wearing the watch that I want, and then he just takes me downstairs and we hop in the car that I want to drive. And then we go past the place I want to live in. And he's kind of showing me around all these sort of things. And then we go on stage and we speak to a couple thousand people. And essentially over that period of time, I've started to essentially become that version of me. And by the end of this little visualization process, I almost connect and become that version of myself. So all the things that used to make me afraid, like money was difficult, or that, I would never have this nice place or this nice car or the nice things. Well, I'm already remembering having it. And so it's stepping into the place of what I already was in. It's bringing it to the surface and making it really easy to step out of it. So a lot of the time, if you want to talk about like in the way of memory training, you're remembering stuff that didn't happen. Your brain is just falsifying every single memory you've ever had. It's just, I don't trust my memories in the slightest at all. Like I just don't trust my brain. I trust myself in a weird way, but I don't trust my memories anymore, because at least 50% of every detail of every single memory you've ever had in your entire life, most of it's not even what happened. And you're only seeing it from one perspective. And truth is a sphere. If you're seeing a 3D object from one dimension, you're seeing 2 dimensions. So you're seeing a circle instead of a sphere. There's unlimited different explanations for whatever memory and circumstance you have, but you're seeing it from one perspective. So as I've started to actually unlock that and recognize that memory doesn't even matter, now in this visualization process, I'm remembering my future self as if it already happened. And it hasn't happened, but my brain doesn't know the difference.
Our eyes aren't actually seeing things. Our eyes are receiving light waves that are translated into electrical signals that are interpreted by the brain.
Are you wearing a white shirt right now? I'm not
wearing
certain
what
anymore.
I believe is a white shirt. But the point is that the brain is creating this imagery that I'm actually experiencing in my mind. I'm seeing light waves that are interpreted in my mind, and my mind is then having this experience that I call vision, that's happening at a really super fast pace. And there's stuff that's going to be interpreted and experienced or not interpreted or not experienced. And much to your point, all of that once inserted into the brain becomes malleable, because if I close my eyes and replay the vision, my brain, I'm seeing the same thing. My brain doesn't know the difference. And so when we harness that superpower in the brain, and much to your point, here's the Danism, allow our body to experience the future in the present because it was already here, then we can actually start to call that experience into us. We can have the emotions that's going to lead to the thinking and lead to the behavior that's going to bring us the outcome every time.
Love it, Matt.
Love that.
That is my English accent.
Is
it? That was more Irish,
Scottish,
I think.
It's Scottish, lad. You're Scottish.
Scottish,
yeah.
Scotland.
Aye, lad.
Hey. All right, I think that's all we've got time for, everybody. Thank you very much for joining in. We've had the amazing Dan Mangena. If anyone wants to find you or wants to learn more about your programs and services, where should they go? What should they do?
Head to dreamwithdan.com. Dreamwithdan.com is the best way to find me. I've got a really cool quiz that they can do on how to identify their number one abundance block. Is there on the homepage of the website. But yeah, dreamwithdan.com. And we'll pop the link about those universal law videos for them as well.
I'm actually imagining a bun dancing in my head right now.
Yeah.
Thanks, memory training. All righty, y'all. You've been awesome. Thank you very much for sticking around listening. I'll see you on the next episode. Dan, you've been awesome. Cheers,
Thank you,
man.
bro. Thanks for having me.
Peace. The crowd goes wild.
Yeah.